And sorry, I am still trying to make sure that everything is going well. So I am just double checking on my phone to make sure that I can see what is happening. This is more of a test broadcast than anything, so that I can make sure that once I start my regular live stream schedule, that things will actually be going the way that I need them to go. So, oh, there it is. Okay, I can see myself now. All right, so sorry if that was a little bit rambly. This is not going to be my official show starter, but I wanted to test things out today because technology is kind of a love-hate relationship, I'm sure, for all of us. But I get really frustrated really quickly when I can't figure things out immediately. So when I tried to live stream on Wednesday and I was pushing all the buttons and I could not get it to work, I was like, okay, I need to take a step back and I'm going to test out some things, make sure I am set up properly, and then I'm going to try again. So if you are here in the chat, welcome. I'm not expecting a lot of people today because I know this is very last minute. But I thought I would just talk about a few things that have come across my newsfeed lately that have been on my mind and get your guys' feedback on these things, because between now and especially at the beginning of November, I know that things are not going to calm down. We are going to have a lot of issues to talk about. I feel like things are going to get even more unhinged than we've seen in the past. So first, I want to just play this little clip. If you guys haven't seen this of Kamala Harris, it was from a couple of weeks ago, and or maybe it was within the last week, but she is using the word woke and encouraging people to be woke, which I just find so interesting because so many people on the left have said that they don't like this word. They don't want us to use this word because they know that there are so many negative connotations with it. But now it seems to be, kind of the leftist MO to change their minds or pretend that they weren't as against something that they're in favor of now, or just completely flip their positions. You just never know. It's so hard to keep up sometimes. So she's using the word woke in a positive way and encouraging people to continue to be so. So I'm not really sure where they flipped on this word and on this messaging, but here we go. So let me know if you can hear it, if the sound comes through, because again, this is also a test broadcast, so a test live stream, so that I can make sure everything is working correctly.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah. We have to stay woke.
Now, I don't know I'm going to go this far. If you can see this lady right here, I can't remember what her name is, but she almost looks like she is trying to hold her composure. I'm not entirely sure what is going on, but it's almost like she's cringing on the inside at the use of this word, knowing how negative this word has become for people on the left, knowing that it is such a huge turnoff and that it really has put people off from associating with the left. And so I'm not sure that she was given the heads up that Kamala Harris would be going out and promoting this in a positive way, or if they just sprung this on her. But she seems to be really, really uncomfortable. So I find that very interesting. But here we are again, using the word woke, encouraging people to be woke. So, everything that we see going forward coming from these guys that is so extremist and leftist and radical that has been associated with this word, they're not going to be able to turn things around and say, no, we never said that. No, we're not woke. Stop calling us woke, because their presidential candidate right here is encouraging people to do it. So I don't really know what to make of it. But we know that this is kind of where we're at. So we're going to get back to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and what's been going on with their campaign lately. We'll get back to that in just a minute. But I wanted to, speaking of woke, touch on this story from Delta Airlines. And I wish I could have found the clip, but there was an ad going around, probably at least, it was within the last month, so I know it was fairly recently, but they were mad because there had been some policy that said that they couldn't wear pins on their uniforms other than, I couldn't even remember if it was the American flag, but they basically had to stop wearing activist pins on their uniforms. It kind of reminds me, if you have ever seen the movie Office Space with Jennifer Aniston, and where she's talking about her flair, and because she's working at this restaurant and they have layer suspenders on and they have to wear their flair, it's almost like they had their flair taken away from them, and a lot of people were upset about that. And so I saw this ad going around that basically they had these employees of this airline, I want to say it was Delta, if I'm wrong please correct me, basically saying that because they couldn't wear their pride pins anymore or their BLM pins anymore, that they were now getting harassed more, that they were now being discriminated against more. And so many of these corporations and of these businesses adopting these policies and this mindset that they have to be able to display their political activism no matter what, and that America isn't inclusive enough. It isn't embracing of diversity enough just by having the American flag, which is untrue, because we know that the American flag includes everybody. It means rights for everybody. But they've twisted people's brains, twisted people's minds around to say that we have to be able to embrace all of these activist talking points in order to push the inclusion and diversity that they claim does not exist in America. Of course, it doesn't exist in the way that they portray it, because it really isn't about inclusivity and diversity. It exists in the way that it is actually supposed to exist. So we have Delta Airlines here, who has said, this is the Delta's Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And before I do that, really quick, I am going to just share this link on Twitter and see if we can get a few more people to come join the chat. Sorry, guys. I should have done that initially. I just wanted to kind of get that out there. So we have the Delta's Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Social Impact Officer, Kira Lynn Johnson. And she's basically said that during their announcements, their overhead announcements, they are going to stop using the phrase ladies and gentlemen. So just a little bit of this article. It says, over the last few years, Delta Airlines has embraced the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda under the purview of a chief officer who believes that the phrase ladies and gentlemen isn't inclusive. I just have to say, before we get any further in that, if we had their version of inclusive for their announcements, can you imagine how long that would be? How many genders they would have to list? That announcement would be like 45 minutes long if they made it truly inclusive, at least their version of inclusive. So I find that kind of funny. But it says Delta's Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Social Impact Officer, Kara Lynn Johnson, has said publicly Delta is striving to boldly pursue equity, which has impacted every level of the company, from its hiring practices to the language it uses in gate announcements. So of course, we know that means they are implementing DEI policies to have the appearance of diversity when they hire people, not people that think differently, not people that have opinions and beliefs that they disagree with. You know, we have to have everybody that thinks and believes the same things that they do, that believe in this version of DEI, but just to have the appearance. So if we don't have enough pilots that are of different skin colors, then we've got to eliminate the standards that make, pilots as exceptional as they are and to do their job as well as they can. We've got to eliminate those standards because we didn't have enough people that reached that standard through their merit, which everybody is capable of doing regardless of their skin color. But since not enough people with different skin colors reached the top level, they've got to say, we've got to eliminate these standards and we've got to just start picking from different people throughout the program to get this appearance of diversity, which of course is going to lower the quality of the flight experience that you are going to have, not because people of different skin colors aren't capable of flying airplanes, but because, again, not enough people, not enough diversity of skin color reached the standard on their own. So that is what they're talking about here. That could be very, very dangerous, but that is what this person has embraced. But now she wants us to stop using this language because apparently it isn't inclusive. So this is her talking about that.
Other more subtle forms of communications, I would call them the little c communications. They might even be verbal communications. So we're beginning to take a hard look at things like our gatehouse announcements. We welcome ladies and gentlemen, and we've asked ourselves, is that as gender inclusive as we want to be? We're looking at some legacy language that exists in some of our employee manuals and getting to the root of the way some things are described and saying, does that actually send a message of inclusivity? So I think, but the other more subtle.
So I'm going to always have an issue with this line of thinking. And I'm hoping that enough people are willing to stand up for what is right, and maintain the idea and the appreciation for truth and honesty, because ladies and gentlemen is not meant to be offensive. Ladies and gentlemen is not meant to exclude anyone. The only reason that words like this are now considered discriminatory is because we have this entire group of people that have accepted delusion, that have said that whatever people imagine in their brains is totally fine. Whatever people want to be called is totally fine, regardless of the impact on everybody else, and that there's no basis in reality anymore. And I just don't think that this is going to end well. And sometimes I have to wonder, like, how much these people really understand about the purposes of DEI, or if they really truly believe this stuff at their core, that they need to eliminate language in order to make all levels acceptable, to make people feel like whatever state that they are in mentally, that they don't feel excluded by language that they've been told doesn't apply to them. So I don't know what the end game is here, because we have, the people in charge that use this ideology obviously to create chaos, to make things unstable, to create a society of people that eventually are just going to be so tied up in knots and so flipped upside down that we're not going to know which way is up, and we're going to be begging the government to save us. So this really is about crippling society, about crippling our sense of truth and reality, and just making things just so incredibly insane and unstable that we have no choice but to turn to people who are now in charge of all of our resources and property and money and all of those things, and beg them to take care of us. But I don't know sometimes how much, people, whether they work at Delta, or we covered Tractor Supply recently. I know that Robbie Starbuck has been covering a number of different organizations that have all of this kind of mindset at their core, going on behind the scenes. So I don't know. And I would love to hear your opinions on that. How much do you think people really understand what it is that they're pushing here? Or do they really truly believe that they are creating a more inclusive and loving and tolerant society? So I don't know. I don't know sometimes. But I did want to get into a couple of other things. So I have about 1,000 different tabs here, but this is from the new Harris Walz campaign. I'm not sure if this was from their original rally, or if this was from another one. I really haven't been following that super closely, even though it's the only thing flooding my Twitter newsfeed right now is all of the stuff that's going on with Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, and Kamala Harris. So this was a video posted by the NRA, and this is where Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are talking about finally implementing all of the anti-2A policies that they have always wanted to put in place. And this is not about, obviously we know this is not about safety. This is not about saving lives. This is not about keeping communities safe, because nobody is better equipped to keep our community safe than the people that actually live in those communities. But that's not what they're about, but they want us to think that that's what they're about. And unfortunately, far too many people have fallen for this. But this is them talking about their plans to executive order, because they're not dictators. Remember, they're not dictators. To executive order all of these anti-2A laws the minute they get into office.
And together, when we win in November, we are finally going to pass universal background checks, red flag laws, and an assault weapons ban. And together, when we win in November, we are...
So we've got the universal background checks. And pretty much every state, you know, I'm not an expert on this, but I know that every state has their own background checks. I know when we lived in Colorado, it took at least a couple of days to get a firearm. You had to go in, fill out the paperwork, and then they did all of the background checks, and then you would go pick up your firearm later. So we've got all that. They've got the red flag laws, which in theory, we're supposed to sound like a good thing. You know, somebody that if you feel like they are unstable, you should be able to report them if you don't feel that I don't know if you know they have a firearm and you don't feel that they should have one, or that they are a danger to themselves or others. But obviously we have people that are going to abuse this policy just like they did with COVID. People all too willing to report their neighbors for anything that the government tells them to be against. So we already know, they already tested people's compliance and willingness to report their neighbors to the government anytime they were offended about something or worried about something, or just wanted to see their pro-Trump neighbor get in trouble for something, or, you know, they were all too happy to be tattletales. So we know that these red flag laws are just an invitation for people who have fallen for the lies of these two, that are all too willing to call whatever hotline they need to, whatever government official they need to get their neighbor in trouble, and even willing to make things up. And we've seen stories like that as well, people just completely making things up to report their neighbors. So that's going to be awesome. And also to get an assault weapons ban. And nobody seems to really be able to define what an assault weapon is, because an assault is a physical attack on someone, and pretty much anything that you use can be used to physically attack somebody. So the words, as we know, don't make any sense at all, but they're not meant to. They're meant to be very, very general. They're meant to give people a false sense of security, to make them feel like they're actually fighting for something. But really what they are is to get people one step at a time toward the thing that they really want, to get them to accept language like assault weapon, to get people to accept words like gun violence. And that way, you know, once they have their foot in the door, then they can take one more step at a time, and people aren't going to stop them toward the true thing they want, which is to completely abolish the Second Amendment, to make sure that none of us can defend ourselves from anyone, you know, whether it be somebody that's a danger in our own community, whether it's a next door neighbor, to people that are government officials and come to our doors and want to arrest us for anything that they think that we need to be arrested for. So that's going to be really, really fun. But I found this interesting video. So this was on, if you've ever been to Liberty Hangout, this is Caitlin Bennett, and she's talking to this couple. This video went viral a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was about a week ago. It looks like it was posted a couple of weeks ago, sorry. And it went viral, and I thought it was really interesting to watch, because she's trying to have a conversation with this person about their support of Kamala Harris. And particularly, he gets into this conversation about guns and assault weapons and AR-15s, and he decides on so many different positions, it's really hard to keep track of. But let's just have a look at what he has to say. Let me go back just a little bit here, so you guys can let me know, like, if any of this makes sense to you. But I was just kind of like, what?
Again, they're just weapons of war. Again, they're just weapons of war.
Have you guys been following the Democrats with the Democratic debate? Kamala Harris?
she's got a bright future.
Okay.
I'd like to have her. Realistically, I'd like to see some real concrete answers out of her.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything concrete, but I think she has a bright future.
So something that is concrete is that she would like to ban AR-15s with the use of an executive action if Congress didn't pass any type of gun control to do so within the first 100 days of her taking office. Is that something you would support?
Yeah, absolutely, I'd support that.
Why?
Because those are weapons of war, and unless we're trying to overthrow our government, we don't need them.
So which branch of the military uses AR-15s?
I didn't say that the branch of the military used AR-15s. I said they were weapons of war.
Okay. What war did we use them in?
Again, they're just weapons of war.
What is a
So already he's using language that he can't defend. I mean, to me, the weapons of war, there are so many different kinds of weapons that are actually used in war. So that can encompass any number of things. And I would think that the people proposing this talking point, saying this is a weapon of war, would be able to say they were used in this way in this particular war, they were used this way. But they have, like I said, they're just intentionally vague because they want it to encompass anything pretty much that we could probably use to defend ourselves with. So it probably won't stop with just guns and AR-15s, but you know, you can tell that he doesn't have the information to back it up, and you're going to see this as we get into this conversation. But it's just mind-boggling to me.
a weapon of war? What do you put in that category? How do you name that category?
Well, you know, any kind of weapon that you can use that you don't need to specifically, realistically reload every 6 rounds. Something that you can do mass destruction with. That, you know, honestly, like an AR-15, where you can do mass damage in schools and mass damage to people in any other kind of war.
Can you not do that with, let's say, a handgun, a Glock, a 1911?
You can do any kind of damage with 6 rounds. That's why you only need 6 rounds. Why do you need?
So we only need 6 rounds.
I didn't say we only needed 6 rounds. That's not what I said. You're putting words in my mouth.
Well,
Okay, well, he's the one that specifically brought up this 6-round thing. She didn't bring it up. She didn't say anything about the number of rounds. So he started out over here where he's just talking about weapons of war. Then he's talking about weapons that you can do a mass amount of damage with. Again, very, very, very vague terms. So what does that mean? And now we're slowly whittling it down. He's like, okay, well, something that you can only carry 6 rounds in, you only need 6 rounds. And then she mentions questions the 6-round things, and he's like, well, that's not what I said. And already we're flip-flopping back and forth where it's like it's like, how can I follow your thought process when you're not even following your own thought process here? So let's keep going a little bit further, because I found the whole conversation just so amusing yet terrifying at the same time.
well, that's why I was asking. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. That's why I clarified with you. I'm not saying this guy said this. I'm clarifying, so we're not fake news here.
I didn't say that.
Do you think that there should be only 6 rounds, or what's the limit for you?
I didn't say anything about a limit. All I'm saying is that, yeah, specifically, because we don't necessarily need anything more than 6 rounds for personal use. If you want to go hunting, go hunting.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep stopping this, but it's just so funny to say, well, he's like, I didn't say anything about a limit, but I did say that we only need 6 rounds. So which is it? Because you either don't think that we need a limit, or you think that it's only necessary to have a certain amount, which is the same thing as putting a limit on it. So am I missing something here? Let's keep going.
Okay.
But, you know, for weapons of war, like an AR-15 or, you know, anything bigger than that, specifically speaking, I don't think you need anything like that for sport.
Okay, what about self-defense?
I mean, don't you think one would do it?
One round?
Bullet? Yeah, don't you think one round would do it?
For self-defense?
Yeah.
You better be a good shot.
Well, okay.
You better be a damn good shot for only 1 bullet in a gun.
I mean, is more than one person going to rob your house?
Absolutely, that tends to happen, yeah. Getting mugged by...
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think... I honestly, and I could be wrong on this, I think the vast majority of the robberies that we see are more than one person. because they want to get in there and be able to leave as quickly as possible. And they want to be able to have each other's backs and defend each other in case something goes wrong. So I think that's insane to say, is there going to be more than one person that robs your house? That's something that happens all the time. And I'm trying to think of what else he just said. Oh, well, I remember watching this and thinking to myself, you know what I wish Caitlyn would have done? I wish in this moment she would have turned to this woman here. I don't know if it's wife, his girlfriend. I pray that it's just his girlfriend so that she can look at this guy and just say, you know what, this isn't going to work out. But, you know, if they're married, then best of luck to them. But I wish Caitlyn would have turned to this person and said, or would have turned to the woman and said, do you think that you could fend off an attacker with one bullet? Would you feel safe if you only had one shot to fire at somebody that was coming at you? Do you feel confident enough in your skills to be able to defend yourself with one bullet? So, and back to his original point, he's saying, well, I'm not in favor of a limit. He went from 6 and now we're at 1. Just wait, the conversation is going to get even more ridiculous, I promise.
Gangs even walking around downtown Cleveland. It's not a very safe area. I would want several rounds in my firearm.
You think more than one person is going to mug you at any given time?
I think that is a possibility, yes.
Well, so is lightning striking right now, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Okay. But we should be prepared. I mean, do you have a fire extinguisher in your home?
Of course.
The likelihood of you causing a fire is very low, isn't it?
Not necessarily.
Okay. But why would you have that? You know, it's not likely that you're going to catch do you know how to use an oven?
Equating trying to put out a fire in my house to somebody breaking in my house and me shooting them is not the same. That's getting too
I think the policy, the premise is the same, is that you don't want more than one round in a bullet in a firearm because you don't think the likelihood of more than one person robbing me is, it's not there. You only need one. So what happens when I shoot someone that's trying to me and it misses, and I only had that one chance to prevent myself from being or killed by somebody that is stronger than me, is bigger than me, he's about to hurt me. I only have one round. What if I miss? Am I just out of luck?
You're adding 2 + 2 and getting potato. They're two completely separate issues.
Somebody explain to me how this is 2 separate issues. She's trying to keep the conversation about firearms and whether or not they are used as self-defense, what is a reasonable basis to have that self-defense, what are like real life scenarios that could happen that you might need more than one bullet. And then in order to kind of steer the argument or make it seem like Caitlyn doesn't know what she's talking about or that she isn't staying on track, he says silly things like, well, you're trying to say that 2 + 2 equals potato. And it's like, no, she's trying to get a straight answer out of you. And I have to wonder if this woman is just sitting here like, I don't even know what to say. My husband is an idiot. So there's only like 2 more minutes left. We won't have to go through the whole thing, but I do want to catch just a little bit more.
Banning AR-15s,
Okay.
although not necessarily the right answer,
Okay.
it's the idea that we don't necessarily need access for everybody to have those things.
Well, we don't have that currently. Not everybody has access that by the federal government, by state governments. Black market, yes, because gun control has shown not to work. So people do have access to that shouldn't. Do you think it's okay to ban someone else's property with the use of an executive action by the force of the government? Because when they ban that, who's going to come to your door and make sure you don't have those? Government officials, police with guns, guns that we aren't allowed to have as civilians. How do we give that force and that power to the government to come and do that to us as private citizens? How is that okay? How do you stand for that?
Nobody's specifically saying that anybody's going to come to your house and take guns. That's not what we're after. All we're asking for is safe ownership by professionals or by people who are trained and know how to use these, people that know how to lock them up. Banning them specifically to people like myself, who I have no professional training with firearms. I should not be allowed to own that kind of weapon of war.
Okay, so he's saying that he's not for banning them, but that he's saying that someone like him that isn't trained in a firearm shouldn't have them. So therefore, the only people that should have them, as he just said, are people that are trained, like the military, like police officers, like government officials. So he keeps saying that he's not for certain things while explaining why he is in favor of those things. It's very difficult to keep track of this type of logic. So I don't know how Caitlin Bennett keeps a straight face through some of this. So there's only about a minute left.
Because I don't know how to use it.
You keep saying weapon of war. What standard and what characteristics of a firearm has to be there to be a weapon of war?
Again, weapons that can be used to cause significant amounts of damage in very short amount of time.
So cars.
Again, 2 + 2 is not potato.
Cars kill more people than firearms every year. Are they weapons of war?
I'm
pretty sure people of a certain religion like to run people over with cars.
Listen, you're generalizing people, and that's absolutely incorrect.
You're generalizing gun owners, I would say.
No, I said responsible gun ownership. I said specifically that I shouldn't have. I'm not.
So I would like to say hi to Nessie Angie, a secret afternoon stream. I am just testing my streaming today. I want to make sure everything works. I am going to be regularly streaming on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. So I am testing. So I'm just going through and talking about some things that I have seen on my Twitter feed and just come across my news feed lately. So this is a video from Liberty Hangout, and Caitlin Bennett is trying to talk to this guy about gun ownership. And while he says that he is not in favor of banning them, he's not in favor of, these certain restrictions, or he's not in favor of limits, he has said that he is in favor of people not owning AR-15s, not that people that are not trained to own firearms shouldn't have them. So pretty much anybody that isn't a police officer or military or government official. And also saying that, it really isn't necessary for people to have more than 6 rounds. And then he went down to 1 round. So it's just been a very confusing conversation. But again, he keeps saying 2 + 2 = potato. It's an insane argument to make, because Caitlin is saying, there's a lot of different ways that people can cause the kind of destruction that he is talking about. But the fact that they've been able to get people to just focus on guns shows how effective their messaging has been, and that it will not take much to tip these people over to the edge, to get them to agree when the government does come out with these bans, when it does come out with laws that says that we cannot own them. And when he says responsible gun ownership, who's going to define that? The government is going to define that. And they're going to say that you cannot own a gun unless you are a police officer or somebody that is trained and has a job per their job or government orders to own one. So he's using all of the language that he has been trained to use to get him right into the spot that says, we don't need the Second Amendment at all anymore, that we should not have gun ownership at all anymore. So he's right where they want him to be. About 20 seconds left. Let's see if he surprises us with anything intelligent.
I'm not generalizing anything. You're sitting here generalizing people and trying to put words in my mouth.
Okay.
Because you think I'm going to answer a certain way. I'm not answering that.
No, you did. And I think we got really good content. So thank you so much. Check us out at libertyhangout.org. Do you guys support free speech?
Absolutely.
All right. One for one, I guess. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
We support free speech until you say something that the government doesn't like and they show up at your doorstep with their firearms and their weapons, saying that they can arrest you and you don't have a means of defending yourself. So that is how we kind of lose our free speech as well. So this guy is clearly, like I said, just right where these guys want him to be. So let's switch over a little bit here. There have been some very interesting 2 + 2 = tomatoes for him. Yeah, I'm loving the comments. I don't know what he was thinking, or it's very clear that he wasn't. I want to know what his wife was thinking, or his girlfriend, or whoever that was. Maybe it was his sister, and he's just probably thinking, this is why my brother is still single. But anyway, so these are, if you guys have not seen these are a couple of interesting clips from Tenet Media. This is Taylor, I want to say his last name is Hansen. I should have looked that up beforehand. But he's going around this rally or this convention, maybe it's at a rally, or maybe it looks like it's at a Kamala event, but these are people that are voting for Kamala because they're afraid of their rights getting taken away. So this is one where he goes up and asks, like, why do you support Kamala Harris? So let's have a listen.
Voting for Kamala Harris.
I don't want to lose my rights. Like, I'm a trans man and I'm gay and I have been pregnant and I've had an abortion before, and I don't want to lose that. I'm afraid of not being able to be myself anymore because from what I've heard, Trump's America doesn't want me to look like this. So that's why I'm here today and that's why I'm voting blue.
What about you?
I've also been pregnant and had an abortion before. I was a minor and it would have been dangerous for me to properly, like, it would have been dangerous for me to carry a baby with, like, personal reasons and everything. I also, like, I'm very, alternative, and I feel like if Trump were to win, I wouldn't be able to, like, express myself through my looks and everything, and wouldn't be able to have the piercings or the dyed hair or the tattoos that I want. I would be able to be myself, and my dad's very pro-Trump, and I'm just very
Pro-Kamala.
pro-Kamala. Yeah, I don't, it's
Does
just,
that cause a divide at all?
yeah, it definitely does.
Let me know if you can hear the videos as well, and I will find out after this stream is done if the video sound is coming through properly. I hope it is. But we've got the first person here that says they are a trans man that has had an abortion. So that's just so sad. It's so sad. And then this young lady here who has also had an abortion. I don't know the personal circumstances of it, and I am not shaming her for that. It's clear that she probably went through something very traumatic, and that trauma is coming through with her self-expression now. But both of these people seem to be under the extremely false impression that they wouldn't be able to wear what they want to wear or express themselves how they want to express themselves if Trump got elected. And I would hope that this person would go back and talk to their dad, and because they look very young, so I'm sure that they were both probably in high school when Trump was the president, and there's a lot of high school kids just not paying attention. They don't need to pay attention to what is going on in the world. They don't really have to worry about policy because, things like taxes and healthcare and security, when it comes to the border and all these things, they don't really have to think about that. Their parents are worrying about that stuff for them. But when they get out into the world and they hear all of these things, then they worry about these very superficial things, and they still haven't had a lot of real world experience to tell them how things look under different people, and they really truly don't understand how the Constitution works. So I just want to set these girls, their mind at ease. You can wear black. I went to high school quite a while ago with people that dress like this. This is not a right that anybody is coming after. No one's going to stop you from looking like this. As far as whether or not you are a woman that wants to identify as a man, no one is going to stop you from believing that's what you are, but no one's going to federally force people to not use the pronouns for themselves that they want to use, but it's going to it's going to stay my personal choice as to whether or not I want to use those pronouns. It's going to protect my free speech, and that is the whole point. It's not about just your personal expression. It's about each of us and both of us being able to adhere to what we believe and express ourselves in that way. I want to be able to express myself as a Christian. I want to be able to live my life as a Christian and to be able to express myself and to go to church and to speak about God in public without offending somebody. But those are the kind of things that that a Harris-Walz administration would absolutely want to get rid of, and those things would be directly under attack. So, we're on the same page when it comes to wanting to have this freedom of expression, but the very people that you are supporting, Harris-Walz, they are against those things. They are in favor of censorship. They are in favor of government enforcement of censorship. And if, when it comes down to our gun rights and our right to protect ourselves and our community, once those are gone, none of us have the right to express ourselves in the way that we want to. So it really is sad when these people are so confused about how things really run. And of course, the public education system has done that on purpose. They have made sure that these next generations do not understand how the country works. They don't understand what these terms like dictator and fascist actually mean. They have made sure that they have no idea what communism means. They have made sure that they're so confused about what freedom and liberty actually are versus what communism and dictatorship is, that they have the meanings of these things completely reversed. And it is absolutely terrifying. But, you know, I have nothing against these two young ladies. And I know that the one said that they are a trans man, and you know, you are allowed to believe that. You are allowed to have that belief about yourself, but it is my personal right to not go along with that because you are a woman. And that's not to say that if I call you a woman, that I expect you to dress or behave a certain way. You are still welcome to look that way and express yourself in that way. So, you know, it has been extremely confusing to make it seem like these terms are a means of control, which they're not. So these are right here, a couple of Kamala Harris voters, a couple of very young people that don't know how the world works. So, you know, that's pretty much their bread and butter. We've got a couple more here. It says this girl, one of the comments here, Nessie says, oh, this girl said 8-year-olds can get pregnant in another interview. It's wild. It's wild. Let's see one more. And let me know in the comments if you can hear the videos, if the sound is good, because like I said, this is also a test stream and I want to make sure that everything is coming through smoothly. So when I get on my regular live stream schedule, which is going to be every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., I want to make sure everything is running smoothly. So we're going to listen to one more.
So why are y'all voting for Kamala Harris?
It's ridiculous how anymore it's really hard for people like us, like queer people and just anyone else in that general umbrella. Thank you. General umbrella. It's just really hard for us to get rights, and with how the Republicans are handling everything, it's just putting more and more stress on us, like basically taking away everything we have. And it's just important that we feel safe just even living here, because everyone's been wanting to like leave the country, and this is like the only chance we have to properly fix everything.
That's, again, just a really sad statement because I don't see anybody running away from the U.S. We have millions of people, in fact, that are running toward the U.S. So, again, we have somebody else that just really has had their brain kind of tied into knots about what is really going on. And they've confused rights with, you know, personal decisions and personal beliefs. And the thing that most people are up in arms about when it comes to these queer identities, which I'll get into in a minute about what that really means. But it's about the fact that this has taken over the education system, that this is taking up far too much class time, that, you know, teachers across the country, particularly in blue districts. I live in a fantastic school district with my kids, and so far I have not seen any of this stuff. Not to say that it couldn't happen here, but it really hasn't been as bad. But I know that in other areas like California and Oregon and, you know, New York, that you're going to see all of this pride stuff everywhere, that you're going to see the pride parades, you're going to see the drag queens reading to kids, you're going to see the open displays of nudity, as we saw in the parades in San Francisco. Those things are not a right. That is not your right to do that. It is not your right to teach a child that that is how the world works. It is not your right as a teacher to instill those values and that belief system into a child. That is what we are talking about here. You can be who you want to be. You can live your life how you want to, but you don't get to infringe on other people, you know, especially in the public education system where that is meant to be geared towards academics and learning. And we want to make sure our kids emerge from the system knowing how to read and write and do math and all of these things, which they are not able to do. We want to make sure that those things are happening and not being taken over by this activism. I swear the 90s was the peak era for freedom of thought and expression. The 90s was great. I mean, not to age myself, but that's when I was in high school and we didn't have any of this. You know, I had a really good friend in high school, and she went through this phase where she's just this pale girl with this curly hair, and she chopped it all off and dyed it black, and she started doing goth, and she started, kind of dressing like a lot of these people, and it was her thing. It was a phase. It was a phase that she went through, and now she looks like a completely different person. Like, that is not who she was at that time. You would never guess, looking at her now, that she ever went through that phase. And we want people that are young to be able to figure out who they are without doing this permanent harm to their psychology, to their mental state, to their emotional well-being, and to their physical well-being before they get to a place where they truly understand the impact of these long-term decisions and what it means to every other aspect of their life, when it comes to their professional life, when it comes to their personal life. So, there's so many things that have just gotten so confused in this conversation, and you can see that. And, it really does take maturity and experience usually to get to this place. Although unfortunately we have far too many older people my age and older that seem to have fallen into these kind of talking points as well. But let me see what this other girl has to say.
What about you?
I would definitely say that I want to keep my rights. I really do. As a queer individual and someone who's physically disabled, and may not be able to do certain things, I feel like they probably wouldn't have accommodations for someone like me, especially.
So if you guys, I highly recommend going over to James Lindsay. His channel is New Discourses on YouTube. If you want to understand the identity of queer, it has nothing at all actually to do with your sexuality. It has nothing at all to do with your gender identity. It is a political identity, and he does a great job of explaining it. But clearly what, the purposes of this queer identity, of these talking points, has really taken hold here. I will link his video in the description box below, but he explains all of this in depth and why this ideology has been instilled in so many young people in this way, and that, it is clearly accomplishing the purposes that it was meant for. But I found it really interesting to discover that queer really truly has nothing to do with your type of sexuality or your gender identity as these people think it does. It is really about your political activism. It really is pretty much meant to be something where it just goes against anything that's traditional, anything that's normal. It is a political stance that is meant to destroy anything that has been standard across the board. So it really is just against the norm, is the best way to describe it, which is what all of these kids have been trained to believe. So these are the Kamala Harris supporters right now. Really quick before I end this live stream, because I know that it is getting to be an hour, but I can picture Samantha wearing a baseball cap backwards and saying, "Hello, fellow kids." Don't give me any ideas. My kids are starting school this week, and I am going to miss them while they're in school, so I might just have to throw on a baseball cap and pretend to be a student. I will identify as a 13-year-old, so that's just weird, but that's how much I miss my kids when they are in school. But let's listen to a couple of clips from JD Vance, because he has done some great interviews lately. The question is, where's Kamala? Where's Tim? They haven't done, she is saying about immigration and whatever else. So she said she could do it right now. She was talking about inflation and groceries and bringing down the prices the other day. She could do all of that right now. She doesn't need to wait. So she's had 3.5 years to do it. And all that's happened while she's been in the White House is things have gotten worse. Immigration is terrible. She was the border czar. She has failed on every job that she has been assigned. And it's just mind-boggling to me. So, but she has not done any interviews since announcing her selection as the Democrat candidate. So before I get into this, just to read a comment, will we ever see your husband co-host with you in videos or streams? I will try and get him to. My husband does not want to be on camera. So we will see how that works. But I am definitely planning on bringing other people on to do interviews and to have conversations about these issues. So that is definitely on the books. If I can get my husband to join me for a live stream, then I will definitely do it, but it might take some convincing. So let's hear, this is one segment from an interview that JD Vance did with CNN. So let's listen to this really quick.
I want to move on to something that Governor Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off. The New York Times reports that when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said, "Not me, they're talking about JD."
Well, certainly they've levied that charge against me more than anybody else, but I think that it drives home how they're trying to distract from.
By the way, I should have said they are talking to him about this whole accusation of being weird, this whole weird campaign that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have launched against JD Vance, and that the media has launched against JD Vance, this whole weird idea. So that is what he is responding to. It says Vance responds to weird attacks from the Democrats.
From their own policy failures. I mean, look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. They can accuse me of whatever they want to accuse me of. As Harry S. Truman once said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm doing this because I think that me being vice president will help improve people's lives. So I accept their attacks, but I think that it is a little bit of projection, Dana. If you think about just take a couple of days ago. Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it. So I think that what it is two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name calling instead of actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call me whatever they want to.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably were watching at home. And I think that it's
So I don't know if you guys saw the clip of Tim Walz welcoming his wife on stage. I believe that it was Kamala welcoming her husband and then Tim Walz welcoming his wife. And she comes up on stage and he shakes her hand, which is weird. It is so weird. If my husband shook my hand, I'd be like, what is the matter with you? I mean, I'm not a particularly affectionate person, but he's still my husband, I'm not, just some buddy coming up and shaking his hand. I'm not an associate. I'm not a coworker. So it was very, very, very strange. And so for Dana here to say, well, you're saying that Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife, that's not what he said. He was just saying it was a very strange interaction, particularly coming from people that are trying to paint JD Vance as weird. So it was a very weird thing to do. And I think a lot of us would feel weird if our spouse came up to us and greeted us with a handshake, like we're coworkers or just colleagues or we just met or something. So very, very strange. But I do agree with him on this. He's trying to point out, and I'm glad that he went on CNN to do this because a lot of people aren't going to hear JD Vance speak unless he goes on CNN. So a lot of people are being exposed to him that wouldn't otherwise. But he's coming on to say, we don't need to get on here and call each other names. I mean, I'm sure that's going to happen. Unfortunate, that's the state of politics these days. But the argument, the debate back and forth, we should be calling each other out for is our policy positions. We should be having a dialogue about that. The attacks on each other should be about policy and what we plan to do, what we will do, what we have done, what our records show, what our allegiance to the country looks like. Do our words align with our actions? But instead, the only thing that the Harris-Walz campaign is doing is calling names and using words like weird. And to me, that is not enough. It shouldn't be enough for anybody to vote for somebody just because they're able to label the other side as weird. Okay, great. So you think they're weird. Let's talk about what you plan to do. What are your plans? Don't just talk about, hey, once I get into office, I plan to lower grocery costs. It's like, okay, how? Kamala Harris, you've been in office for almost 4 years, and all the grocery prices have done is gone up since you've been there. So why are you waiting until January to bring those grocery costs down? Why wouldn't you do that now? So another comment, it's like your boyfriend or husband saying thank you when you say I love you. Yeah, it just makes the whole thing awkward. Let's look at one more clip here. Vance on Trump saying Harris happened to turn black. So this is another clip from the interview. And yeah, this will be the last one that we have a look at.
Kamala Harris is whatever she says she is, but I believe importantly that President Trump is right that she's a chameleon. She pretends to be one thing in front of one audience, she pretends to be something different in front of another audience. Look, Dana, she's not running a political campaign, she's running a movie. She only speaks to voters behind a teleprompter. Everything is scripted. She doesn't have her policy positions out there. She hasn't answered why she wanted to ban fracking, but now she doesn't. She wanted to fund police, but now she doesn't. She wanted to open the border, but now she doesn't. She should have to answer for why she presents a different set of policies to one audience and a different set of policies to another audience. And I think that's what President Trump is getting at. This is a fundamentally fake person. She's different depending on who she's in front of. I believe that.
And that is absolutely true. She changes her accent depending on who she is in front of. She changes everything about who she is. She just happened to turn black. I don't know why so many people seem to forget that prior to the 2020 debates and the Democrat nominations and all of that was going on, she was running around saying she was Indian. And we know that she's Indian. She was primarily raised by her Indian mother. She has videos with Mindy Kaling, who is a celebrity, talking about their Indian heritage and their Indian cuisine and cooking and traditions and all of those things. So this is something that she herself put out there. So I don't know why more Black people, if this is like something that is really important to you, why it is not more bothersome to you that she just like woke up one day and decided to be Black just to pander to you, just to win your vote. That to me says how shallow she thinks you are. That is insulting to you, to think that she can just completely change her ethnicity to become part of the club. It makes no sense. Thank you for the feedback. Nessie, stream is working good. Audio's good, aside from a couple of brief lags. That fixed itself. Thank you so much. And that makes me so happy because it's so stressful sometimes. Me and technology, we don't get along all the time. But yeah, I mean, it bothers me. And I mean, as much as people don't like President Trump and saying that he, you know, is too abrupt, he's too this or he's too that, he's too harsh, you know, I don't think that he's a harsh person, but he is who he is. You know exactly what you're going to get with Donald Trump. He doesn't change his personality. He doesn't change depending on who his audience is. He is very straightforward. And I think that that is very respectful of somebody, to be who you are no matter what, and not disrespect the people that you're talking to and feeling like you have to completely change who you are because they can't handle it unless you do. So at least, you know, love him or hate him, at least with Donald Trump, you know what you're going to get. Kamala Harris is somebody that she isn't her own person. She will do, and that's extremely concerning, especially when we're talking about the president of the United States, to have that level of instability, to have that level of, you know, we don't know who's going to be stepping up to the podium. We don't know who we're sending into these meetings with world leaders. We don't know, you know, who we're going to see on the world stage at any given day. And that is a level of instability that is completely different than what we had with Joe Biden, where, you know, he doesn't know that he's president half the time, that he definitely had this cognitive impairment that was so obvious to the entire planet, that put the rest of the world that put us in danger and the rest of the world in danger, knowing that we don't have this strong leader. But now we have somebody that changes who they are on a minute by minute basis. And it could be something that is maybe appropriate for certain moments. It could be deeply offensive for other moments. I don't know. So to me, that's something that is not a good quality in a leader. So I appreciated everything that JD Vance said. Just to tie up this live stream, I found the angriest liberal woman on, if I can find it here, on TikTok, not TikTok, on Twitter. Her name is Angela Belcamino. And this woman, all she does is post videos about how happy she is being single. And she is like the ultimate childless cat lady. So if I have to watch this, you have to watch it.
I'm a bold being child free threatens the patriarchy.
This woman scares me. Like, she's working so hard to make sure that she looks happy and sounds happy. These are 30-second clips on TikTok. I'm going to bet the rest of the time she is sitting in her apartment all by herself with her cats, and I am not shaming cats because I love cats. I would have 12 cats if I could, if my husband would let me. But she is somebody that is just working overtime to make it sound like she is so much happier than she really is, because I don't buy this act for 1 second. And then she's definitely overselling herself in this. She says 42 child-free Saturday night out, no babysitter needed. Ma'am, if I wanted to go out in a dress like that with my husband, I could do it, and I wouldn't need a babysitter either, because my oldest is old enough to babysit. So I don't understand the point, other than the dress really looks not great. But I'm not trying to shame her. I just don't think the dress suits her that well. And I don't think that she's making the statement that she wants to. Maybe I'm just getting a little mean here, but I see so many of these videos of these childless cat lady women that are taking over the world. And this is what they're doing with their time. And, you know, we have so many women, so many liberal women that are making up the voting base of the Democrat Party. And it just, you know, do these people have an interest in the future of the country? Do they really care about the impact of, you know, of all of the things that they're voting for on everybody else? They really don't. They really don't care what our schools look like. They really don't care what our taxes look like. They really don't care whether or not, you know, we can afford homes for our families. These are people that really just care about themselves. And that is the impression that I get from so many of these videos. I think that there is a whole level of narcissism that comes with being, you know, this type of woman, and it really is unfortunate. But I think the last thing that she looks like is happy. So I just wanted to share the angriest liberal woman on Twitter, because yeah, I don't think that she looks happy. Anyway, that is all I have for us today. I really appreciate you. Even, you know, I think I had a couple of I had a couple of watchers today, but I'm just glad everything is working. So make sure to join me on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time. That is when my regular live stream is going to happen. I'm going to try and cover the most current topics that I